Modern science is based upon two faith-based propositions. And what I mean by faith-based propositions is that these are propositions that cannot be validated by reason or logic. And number one, that we live in a comprehensible universe that is lawful, that operates according to constant and universal and even predictable laws. And second, that this universe is comprehensible to the human mind. In other words, that there's a match between the universe out there and what is going on in our minds in here. Now, Christianity did not invent the idea of a rational cosmos. In fact, we owe this idea to the ancient Greeks, not to the tradition of Socrates, but to the pre-Socratics. Now, if you've read the pre-Socratics, some of the stuff that they say appears not only strange, but a little bit nonsensical. Think of Thales, everything is made of water. Wow. Or Heraclitus, everything is always changing. Or Parmenides, nothing is changing, everything is always the same. But if you penetrate underneath what these guys are trying to say, is they're trying to unify the cosmos. Everything is made of water is a way of saying the whole universe is made of the same kind of stuff. Later, by the way, Democritus would speculate, and I say speculate, he didn't do any experiments, that this stuff was in fact particles or atoms. And so Democritus came kind of close, not entirely, but quite kind of close to the truth of the matter. And then the pre-Socratics, when they say things like everything is changing or nothing is changing, there's again a unifying tendency here to try to explain everything that's going on in the form of one thing, and then to argue that the perception that things are changing, for example, is an illusion. Or the perception that everything is the same is an illusion, because even things that are, quote, stationary are in fact viewed from a different perspective. They can be seen as being in motion. So what the pre-Socratics are doing in a big sense is they're replacing the idea of the enchanted universe. The enchanted universe is a universe that's kind of mystical. It doesn't really follow any patterns or laws. And let's remember that in ancient religion, you had this idea that you have, well, a god of the river, a god of thunder. So you don't need laws. The god of the river decides how the river is going to flow. If he wants to move it in a different direction, well, he just basically does that. And the same is true with thunder. There's no kind of lawfulness to it. It's basically the god of thunder deciding to sort of sound off, and that's why we get thunder. So the pre-Socratics are replacing that enchanted world with the idea of a universe that is in some sense comprehensible. What Christianity does is it takes this idea and links it to the idea of a rational God. In other words, God, who could have made the universe any which way he wanted, nevertheless chose to make a rational world, a world that operates lawfully, and a world that is comprehensible to the human mind. Why? Why is it comprehensible to the human mind? Well, because the human mind contains a flash or a particle of God's rationality. We are made, after all, in God's image. The distinguishing feature of God is that God is a creator and a knower, and so we are not all-powerful like God or all-knowing like God, but we are knowing. We do have some of God's ability to comprehend, and even some of God's ability, in a much more limited sense, of course, to create. Now, you might say, wait a minute, Dinesh, I concede that human beings are created in God's image. I concede that human beings have intelligence. I even concede that Christianity is based upon the idea of a lawful universe. But what about miracles? Don't Christians, along with some other religions, by the way, believe in miracles? And doesn't miracles violate the idea of a natural order or a lawful universe? And the short answer to that is no. Miracles don't violate the idea of a natural order. In fact, miracles, to be miracles, depend upon the idea of a predictable natural order. Let's think about it this way. If every time I threw something up, it didn't go down, It wouldn't be a miracle if I were to throw up a pen and it stays suspended in the air. The only reason that would be a miracle is because it contradicts the predictable practice that pens thrown into the air always fall to the ground. So a miracle is a sort of exception. It's kind of like saying we have a rule and everybody knows that the universe operates by rules, but on occasion, God can intervene in the universe and create an exception. So God's creating of exceptions, which by the way takes divine action. God is sort of deciding, listen, I've created this order, but nevertheless, I'm going to kind of intrude upon it and produce a result. And by the way, sometimes miracles are produced using the divine order itself. Debbie and I were talking about some research into the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And one of the archaeologists believes that this occurred by an asteroid or a comet, some foreign object from outer space hitting that part of the earth and basically incinerating it like a nuclear explosion. So the point here being that, yes, that would be a miracle in the sense that God said, if Sodom and Gomorrah is sinful, I'm going to strike, I'm going to act directly in the world. But how does God do it? God does it using the natural processes themselves. So the point I'm trying to make here is that miracles by themselves do not contradict the idea of an orderly, rational cosmos comprehensible to the human mind.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.